Hello, and welcome to this webinar from KHL in partnership with Ideagen's Mail Manager on the subject of curing the headache of rework. Some people say that reducing rework is the holy grail of construction. We might have to ask our speakers about that later, but it's certainly true that rework can and should be reduced, particularly given some of the technological tools that we have at our disposal today. It's also true to say that major construction projects are very likely to encounter largely unforeseen events such as weather delays, changes in a project scope or timeline, materials shortages, possibly even a global pandemic. The question is, are these unforeseen events enough to explain construction's historically poor productivity record? And that is a cue for some statistics. So, according to research from McKinsey & Company, 98% of mega projects suffer from cost overruns of more than 30%, 98% of mega projects. 77% of large construction projects are time delayed by over 40%. We can drill down into this a little more. The technology firm Autodesk reported that in the US in 2021, 52% of rework was caused by miscommunication and poor data. And that cost US construction businesses some $31 billion in 2021. The German market research firm Bau Info Consult calculated that in 2018, 11% of total budget on German projects could be attributed to rework. That's a cost of 16.5 billion euros to German construction firms. And last but not least, in the UK, analysts Crux reported that the average extension time claimed by UK construction projects is 66.1% of the planned product duration. Now, why is construction seemingly failing in terms of efficiency and productivity? And what can be done to reduce errors and reduce rework and make the construction industry more profitable? Today, we have two guest speakers who are coming at the rework problem from very different angles, but hopefully offering solutions that can be easily and quickly implemented to give projects a much needed efficiency shot in the arm. Now, before I make the first introduction, if during the course of this conversation you think of a question you'd like to ask them, please do. Don't use the chat function though, please use the Q&A box. Just click it to open it, then type your question, hit send, and I'll try to get to as many of them as possible, either during the conversation or when we get towards the end of the webinar. And finally, if you have to take an urgent call or for some other reason are unable to stay with us for the duration of the webinar, don't worry, you'll receive an email within a day or two with a link allowing you to watch the recording of the webinar. Okay, so to start with, I'm joined by Simon Carter, Head of Process Improvement at the UK-based construction firm Willmott Dixon. Simon heads up a project that aims to reimagine the end-to-end construction process and drive forward efficiency and productivity. He has 25 years experience in lean project delivery, including the use of digital solutions and formal methodologies, which have the potential to revolutionize construction businesses. So on that, hello, Simon, good to see you.
Good to see you as well, Mike. Thanks for that. No pressure after that.
Thanks for joining. Okay, so by way of introduction, I probably should first ask how long you've been with Willmott Dixon, and were you brought into the company with a specific remit of dealing with efficiency and productivity challenges?
Yeah, so I've now been with Willmott Dixon for close on 4 years now. My initial remit for starting was a fairly common tale of problematic project. Go in, look at that, see what we can do to make it more efficient, get better value. Focused on that one, did several interventions, changed the way that we were working, and off the back of that really started to unpick what the potential was for Willmott Dixon. And so we went from one project to let's get a plan around how we change the business. So yeah.
So when you started, did you have to create a team from scratch, or does the process involve literally everyone getting on board?
Well, great question. So it involves everyone getting on board, but I would say construction people are by their very nature very questioning and need to have a clear reason for change. So they have to see some benefit to what you're doing. So we started off with just myself working with a team and looking at what was preventing us from being successful, or preventing them from being successful just in their day-to-day activity, looking at the sort of quality measures we got, trying to get some data. So I think that was the real first thing that we did was understand what data do we need to measure a project, and how accurate is that. So once we've identified the measurement points, checking that the measurement points we've got are being recorded consistently, the data is a true reflection of what we've got. So a bit of process confirmation around that, and then start to create an action plan for how do we move the dials to get a much more positive response. From doing that, we quickly started to see changes in behaviors. So I think that, I've said it a few times this year, but the word of the year really for us at Willmott Dixon is collaboration. And we are looking to change the way that we collaborate, not only internally, but externally as well, with customers, supply chain, everybody that we work with. So we've got a real open book policy. We're sort of very clear around what we're doing, why we're doing it. That started to create this, it was still only me, but there was a team of people who were interested, who were starting to get passionate about working differently. Because of that, it's then allowed us to say, well, if one person can do that in one area, let's get a few people. And this isn't about creating an army. It's about getting a few key individuals with the right skills and knowledge that can start to drive a change across a team of people. And then ultimately, we want the naysayers to be the minority as opposed to the majority. And once you start to get change that, you've suddenly got, I've got best part of 3,000 pairs of eyes now, looking at what we do every single day, looking for a better way, which is fantastic.
I mean, that sounds really good, and I see the process there. So it's about changing people's mindsets, basically. Did you find when you started with Willmott Dixon that people tended to be working in silos, and was that a problem, or was there already a good teamwork ethic within the company?
I think there's always been a good teamwork ethic, but there is very much this is my bit. So I work as a team, but I'm focused on my bit. And I guess when you look at the process flow, there was a lack of understanding of what's the requirement as you're passing the baton through the process to the next stage. So what does good look like? How are we measuring quality? How are we measuring performance? What information do we need to capture? How do we make sure people understand that information? And then sort of understanding the needs of our customers internally as well as externally, so that we are much slicker at the way we move through the process.
Now, I've seen some of the documentation that Willmott Dixon has in terms of reducing rework and making projects more profitable and more productive and efficient. Could you just give us a very brief run through of how you set up at the beginning of a project?
Right. So we set up at the beginning as we mean to go on. So irrelevant if we're just doing the groundworks or if we're at the finishing stages and there's hundreds of people on the job, we manage and we talk about routines. So we have collaboration routines. That it was quite interesting. One of the stats that you gave was around lack of communication drives quality defects. Definitely. So we insist that all of our projects every single day have a 15-minute huddle, and it is just about what are we planning to do today? Have we got everything that we need? What's the key issues everyone needs to be aware of? And just talk through what does the day look like? And we do that all the way through the project life cycle. We've then got a weekly performance review where we get everybody again back together. This is what we said we were going to do. Did we do it? If not, why not? What's prevented us from being successful? And changing the language slightly so it's more inclusive, and it's not about why didn't you do that? It's why didn't we do that? What can we do differently? What's the learning? Planning out the catchback plan, then looking at what does the following week look like. And we use that as an opportunity for our supply chain to sort of, this is what I need from you to be successful. So it's all about, we are there to facilitate the success of our supply chain. So you need to be bringing to us, what do you need from us? We ensure that could be done. And then you've got your works that you can be doing. So that sort of communication piece is happening. We've then sort of taken that process and digitized that so that it's available on a much wider scale. So we can share that across all of our supply chain partners, customers, internal teams. We've got standard data now we're starting to gather. So we know, or we can predict when we're going to have problems. So we can look at what resource do we need to put into what projects at certain points. And yeah, I guess we've got insights now into the unknown things that hit construction projects are actually pretty known, and they're fairly consistent. You know, if you're doing a construction job in the UK and it's over 12 months long, you are going to have some issues with wind and the weather. But we also know it's fairly static, how many issues you're going to have. So we can plan for that, which I think has been a massive shift for us.
So just drilling down a little bit more into that, because previously you were talking about the process and it sounded very like a very traditional process of change. But yeah, you mentioned bringing technology to bear then. So did you have to buy in systems to make this work, or are you talking about technology that Willmott Dixon already had?
So we did a bit of an analysis. So we had some systems that we could already use, but there was a collaborative system that wasn't actually collaborative, so we couldn't share it. We could use it internally. So from our point of view, it was really good. I then did a review of what systems are out there, and you know, the price band is very, yeah, it's quite wide. Actually, it was about, well, what is it we need to capture, and what's a simple tool that we can give access to everybody. So we've found a tool now that allows us to, at a relatively low cost, run all of our projects on a digital platform from that collaboration point of view, and share that information. I've then built some Power BI that feeds into that. So we've got an API feed through it, which is allowing us to draw the data out, run it through some Power BI so that we can we have gathered, 16 months worth of data in that system, which is giving us all of our trend analysis now, so we can focus in on certain areas and certain times.
Tell us what Power BI is.
So Power BI is it's a Microsoft app. It's basically Excel taken to another level. So it's a way of pulling all of the information out of a system and then turning it into graphs, just making it much more usable. And it's allowed somebody with not many skills in myself, from a dashboard creation point of view, to be able to create some really powerful metrics which are easy to understand.
So how has operating with this digital workflow reduced rework at Willmott Dixon? I mean, can you give us some specific numbers or specific use cases?
Yeah, so specific numbers. So I think what we've started to do is change the language a little bit. So we talk about work now and the workflow and percentage. So we always talk about plan percentage complete, so PPC. So when we started to look at this, we looked at what actually makes up PPC. And this isn't just about getting your activity completed on the day you said you were going to do it. it's getting it done on the day you said it was going to be complete to the right quality, which was a big shift for us. Traditionally, it's just, did you do that? Yes. It will get checked, and then you kind of go back for a rework loop. By changing that and sort of focusing in on that and making it a bit of an event for our projects and our teams, we've seen a 36% productivity improvement across projects across the UK, which is massive. And so it's been really warmly embraced by our people and our supply chain. So we're starting to get a lot of positive feedback from it. It's almost a differentiator now for the way that we operate. So, skill shortage is less of an issue. If you've got two companies you can go and work for, one is quite open, and the way that you work is you're involved in, you're part of. We tend to find we get less people not appearing for work, which again is an issue I know a lot of our competitors are having.
So, I mean, on a specific project, can you give us a sense of how the new methodologies work through? And do they? I mean, I completely get how, from a planning perspective, these things can make a big difference. But does it flow right through to on-site?
Yeah. So it's allowed us to understand actually what is impacting the project performance. So from a quality point of view, what are our top issues? Historically, it was gut feel. So, everybody will have their opinion of what is a most common defect. We know we've got that evidence, and I think by adopting much more business improvement mindset, when we get an issue and we start to track it, we don't look at, well, what can we do differently? And again, I think construction has been very good at, let's inspect it, let's make it somebody's job to check it. We're getting more into, how do we prevent it from ever happening? So looking more at how do we error-proof our systems to drive out defects. So I guess at a higher level, that's where we are. At a lower level, we're getting much more comms out to people working on our projects around quality. So, I would say a lot of our projects now have like a top 10 defects poster that goes up, and it's specific to that project. So what problems have we got on our project based on the data? And we put these everywhere. So it's really in your face. And then everybody can kind of see that, and they can think, actually, I know how that's happened, or I've done that. What can I do differently? And you'll find that just by creating those posters based on data, putting it everywhere, nobody wants to be number one in this particular chart. So we've seen a lot of those issues then being driven out. We can then use that information to almost create the opposite. So best improved, most improved supply chain partner, best quality we're getting. So there's loads of different ways of using the information sort of all the way through to drive out and improve quality.
So when you talk about the supply chain, I mean, you've obviously got a little bit less control of that than you have of internal issues. So have you reached a point where you can actually factor this into the bidding process for projects, and has it made a difference in terms of the projects that you've won?
I think it's starting to. So we've got enough information now. So by supply chain, the decision is less about cost. Cost is a part of it, but actually we've got performance criteria. So whatever trade we're looking at, we have multiple supply chains. We know who's the best performing. We can measure quality by by all of the supply chain. We can measure reaction time for closing out issues. So we've been able to pull all of this stuff and this information through, so that we're making much more data-driven decisions, so that we are setting projects up for success at the very start.
And last question for now. What's the biggest challenge that you faced? I mean, over the 4 years that you've been with Willmott Dixon, what's the biggest headache that you've had to overcome?
Biggest headache. I think it's moving away from, the perception is that a lot of the tools that I use and the way of working can only be used in a factory, and they're only applicable to a repeat process, they're not. This isn't about turning Willmott Dixon into Toyota, and it never has been. This is about what tools that work in the most efficient factories in the world are applicable to us and can make a difference. So we've picked the tools that are applicable. We've changed some of them to suit our needs, and to get people to understand that and fully buy into it was initially a challenge. I would say now it's quite interesting that one of our MDs, he said, if you'd have said to me 10 years ago, we want our projects to be like a factory, I'd have laughed in your face. He says, now I can see it. That's a massive mindset shift.
So given that, can you see a time coming when the issue of rework won't be such a big issue for the industry? I mean, is there a level at which you can't get beyond?
I think there's not a level that you can't get beyond. Because we will continue to challenge it, always try and find a better way, and keep trying to get even better. That is what we are striving towards. We set challenges, so trying to get apartments defect free. So if we're doing a residential tower block, let's see if we can get one apartment absolutely perfect. And we've done it more than once. The minute you get one, the team themselves will say, let's get another. Can we do a floor? And that starts to then drive competitiveness across the business, which is brilliant. And you'll find that the supply chain teams and our teams work closely together to, okay, we think there's going to be an issue here. What can we do? How do we prevent this? So it's a really exciting challenge and a really exciting time to get involved, is what I would say.
Brilliant. Really interesting stuff. Thank you very much, Simon. Don't go away. I already have questions coming in for you, which I'll ask towards the end of the webinar. Okay, so thank you very much. Now I'd like to introduce Beau Scrase Dickins, a senior client manager from Mail Manager, which delivers advanced email systems for project-based businesses. Beau, are you with us?
I am indeed.
Excellent.
Hi, Simon.
Excellent. Good to see you. I know you have a few slides you want to show us, but before we get into your presentation, it would be good to get your general thoughts on how the Mail Manager system could help in reducing rework, as we've been talking about.
Yeah, well, it's a great question, and a little bit of what I'll touch on in the slides is what we call a single source of truth. And essentially, if you've got everyone working off the same information that everyone has visibility to, which hopefully it can be sort of conveyed through our search, what you'll see there is that will reduce rework through everyone operating, on the same information, no one doing anything on out-of-date information. Hopefully I'll do a little bit of a demonstration towards the end and provide a look at that search. But that's really how Mail Manager looks to solve it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Beau. Okay, so if you want to load up your slides, the floor is yours.
Brilliant. Perfect. Let me just get my screen shared. Mike, can you see that okay, just to make sure?
I can see that perfectly.
Brilliant. Perfect. Well, thank you, Mike, and thank you, Simon. Hello, everyone. What I'll be talking about today in the session today, I'll cover the current project management landscape for architecture, engineering, and construction firms, and delve a bit deeper into what the single source of truth is, and why it's so important. I'll then talk about how we reduce risk, delays, and rework by using technology, and how you can transform your information management with machine learning. The technology landscape is globally changing at an ever-increasing speed. This is no different for architecture, engineering, and construction industries, or as we like to call them at Mail Manager, the AEC industries. I'm sure you've noticed that in your own work, technology is continuing to rapidly evolve and drive the AEC to become safer, cheaper, and quicker. It's no surprise that with everything going on in the world right now and teams either working remotely or in a hybrid working environment, it's becoming much more difficult to access project information. AEC professionals like yourselves rely on strong, consistent communication. And this might take the form of pitches, winning clients, and day-to-day communication with your colleagues. The days are gone, or limited, sadly, where you could turn around to the desk next to you and ask your colleague for help to find an email, for example. What this means for a lot of people is that they don't have access to the information they need, and they're left out of the communication loop. As you can imagine, this is a huge problem. With over 347 billion emails expected to be sent and received every day in 2023, email is the most used communication tool and collaboration tool around the world. But it's the one thing most people manage differently. And one of the risks that comes along with this is project rework. A recent study found that 80% of project professionals spend half of their time on rework, and poor communication costs $62 million every year on average. Reworks don't just waste time and money, but cause huge communication breakdowns within your project team and with your senior executive teams and stakeholders. Ideagen's Mail Manager run an annual survey which aims to discover the project management and collaboration challenges facing businesses globally in the AC industries. The report explores how firms manage project information, where they store it, and how they go about retrieving data when facing things like legal disputes. We surveyed over 550 AEC leaders from businesses around the world, from varied roles within their organization, from CEOs all the way to project leads. So let's jump into the findings of the 2023 report. First, the majority of firms cannot easily access the project information. We found that only 10% of respondents were not concerned about the accessibility and visibility of their project information. So most see this as a big challenge. In fact, only 2% of respondents never need to retrieve emails from past projects. Second, over a quarter of organizations are at risk when staff leave the business. Our research has found that more firms are aware of the importance of filing emails as part of the offboarding process when people leave the business than last year. In 2022, less than half the respondents, 44%, indicated that employees were required to file all project-related emails into a central location. This year, that number has risen to 58%, which is great to see. But unfortunately, 28% still do not require emails to be filed, and so then this information is lost. Third of all, disputes are continuing to rise year on year. In our 2021 report, 63% of respondents experienced some form of dispute in their business, and this year that number has risen to a disturbing 91%. Project scope changes and payments continue to be the leading cause of these disputes, and considering the majority of project scope information resides in emails and formal documents, and firms cannot easily access this, it's then hardly surprising that they are continuing to dig themselves into trouble. And finally, email is still the most used collaboration tool in the industry. More than 4/5 of respondents report that most of their project correspondence is via email. Only 19% of respondents use email for less than half their project correspondence. When asked about their business's reliance on email, 11% of people surveyed say that email is now business critical in their organization, with most people agreeing that reliance on email has increased in the last 12 months. For the purpose of our session today, we'll only be focusing on the disputes angle of the research, but we will be emailing everyone a full copy of the full research report in the next few days. So according to the World Bank, we are currently in the second year of sharply slowing economic growth, only overshadowed by the recessions of 2009 and 2020. In the AEC, we're seeing trends where costs are on the rise, margins are tighter than ever, and there are large staff cutbacks. Even larger global firms have reported huge drop-offs in profit as their staff costs are increasing. With so much uncertainty and so many people leaving the businesses, there is a strong need for organizations to think about their information management. How can you be sure that you have access to all documents and correspondence if staff are to leave the business? Considering 28% of businesses do not have an email filing part of their offboarding process, and 81% of firms use email for the majority of project correspondence, thousands of firms are at great risk of losing information. Even more concerning is the finding that 55% of those surveyed indicated that they do not have any email management systems in place. Now, I'm sure everyone on the webinar today has heard or read somewhere that email is dead, but at least in our industry, these claims are inaccurate. In 2023, 88% of survey respondents indicated that their overall volume of emails has increased in the last 12 months. Now, this is a stark increase from the year before. And the contents of these emails are more important than ever, with 11% of people claiming it is now business critical. On top of this, almost 2/3 of AEC businesses regularly need to retrieve emails from past projects, with only 2% never having the need. Over the last 3 years of this research report, these numbers have remained consistent. Many can relate to not always needing to refer to previous emails. However, only 1 to 2% never need to. For many firms, emails and keeping them well organized and accessible is not a consideration until things go wrong. And as we can see, they hold vital information that could mean the difference between winning and losing a dispute. Now, unfortunately, we're seeing that project costs are continuing to spiral, which has led to an increase in these disputes within the AEC. Our research found that only 9% of people surveyed have not experienced a dispute in the last 12 months. This is significantly higher than the previous 2 years of this research report, even beating pre-pandemic records. Now, 63% of organizations experiencing a dispute experienced dispute within the business in 2021, and this number then rose to 78% in 2022, and then 91% in 2023. The top two causes were issues related to project scope changes and chasing payments. This follows similar trends to what we've seen in the previous 2 years of this research report. Now, unfortunately, within the industry, issues relating to project scope are continuing to gain momentum. Now, why is that? Well, it's because the majority of information is relating to scope is stored within email and formal documents. And to break this down further, 12% of project scope changes do not reside within a digital space at all. Oh, apologies. Within a digital space at all. Shockingly, 11% of respondents highlighted that the only place they're kept is within the project manager's head. And in 2020, pre-COVID, this was 6.2%, which shows an alarming increase of AEC firms not formally recording project scope changes in the past 3 years. As you can imagine, this then heavily influences the amount of disputes that organizations face and cause reworks as well. With findings like this, it's hardly surprising that 90% of businesses are concerned about project information not being readily available or accessible. Now, we're constantly seeing that failing to make emails visible and accessible to project teams can cause issues that result in legal dispute. According to Arcadis's 2022 Global Construction Disputes Report, the global average value of disputes was $52.6 million, with an average length of 15.4 months. Firms simply cannot afford to let information like email correspondence slip through the cracks. We've seen this leaky bucket of email negatively affecting AEC firms globally recently. Firms must be aware of their corporate history and be able to prove everything that has happened on projects, especially as the stakes are so high. A recent disaster that has shaken the UK AEC industry was a huge fire at the Grenfell Tower in London, where very sadly 72 people lost their lives. This was one of the UK's most or worst modern disasters. Now, I think some of you on the call today might not be based in the UK. So just as a quick summary, the fire was caused by an electrical fault and spread quickly through due to highly flammable cladding that was used in the building. Now, there was an inquiry into why this happened, and damning emails were uncovered indicating that certain parties were aware that the cladding materials used were unsafe. Now, given the nature of the industry you operate in, firms need to guarantee information visibility and accessibility to ensure that they are making the right decisions. In the best cases, poor information costs firms money, but in the worst, it makes people unsafe. Given the size of the global disputes environment, the cost of mismanaging emails is immense and includes information being locked in individuals' inboxes, staff wasting time looking for the information they need to do their job, and staff leaving the business or going on holiday. But a range of important information is trapped within their inbox. With proper email management processes in place, businesses can ensure that all project information and correspondence is captured and accessible by entire project teams. This will reduce the risk of rework and stop project disputes in their track. Plus, you'll have this information to hand years down the line should a liability dispute arise. That's just been a quick overview of Ideagen's Mail Manager's state of the AEC report. We'll send that out, like I say, in the next few days for anyone who wanted to read it in a bit more detail. So what does this mean for information management, and how can it help you avoid disputes going forward? Now, luckily for us, technology advancements are continuing to improve how we work. As I touched on earlier, AEC firms are increasingly using tech to boost efficiencies. Things like VR and 3D printing means you can identify any errors before construction, for example. And BIM advancements mean that team members can all be on the same page. The use of BIM has seen several benefits in the global AEC industry, including reduced waste, improved collaboration, enhanced productivity, time savings, and overall increased technology adoption. It's improving safety across the industry and provides deep insights into existing business buildings as well. So while all this new tech is making our lives easier and really boosting the industry, it's hardly surprising that it's harder than ever to access project information and ensure that teams follow the information management processes. We have access to a massive amount of information, both inside and outside of our organizations. This sensitive and often confidential information is typically stored within documents or correspondence, and it can often be quite inaccessible, stored across different applications or by different departments. Information is the lifeblood of all project work, but only if it's well organized, accessible, secure, and updated. And this isn't an easy task. So what's the solution? You need to have a single place where all of your project and client information is stored so you can see the full and complete picture of any given project you're working on. You need a single source of truth, which is what I was referring to earlier, and a digital record of securely created, updated, and accessible information covering the entirety of a project's life cycle, including design, construction, and then management as well. A single source of truth provides better working methods and encourages more transparent communication. This is helping organizations drive change faster without compromising on quality, and it ensures that all project and client teams have access to the correct information they need when they need it. Managing project information in one place is critical to avoiding disputes and rework, and when done right, allows teams to use their time, resources, and knowledge to make the right decisions at the right time. Now, you might be thinking, this sounds overwhelming, but tech is on our side. The two easiest ways to create a single source of truth are by removing manual processes of information sharing and increasing information visibility across the board. One thing to keep in mind is if your single source of truth is not fully complete, it's not the truth. What we've seen in our research report is while firms are stringent about how their documents and contracts are managed, email is the one thing that everyone manages differently. Without the right tools and automation in place, project teams are left to their own devices. Some people will move emails into Outlook folders, some will save important information to their individual desktops, and others simply delete information if they no longer see a need for it. In all of these scenarios, that information is trapped in silos and inaccessible then to the wider team. Losing access to essential emails and not including them in your overall information strategy can prove detrimental to firms. When emails are managed correctly, everyone in an organization has access to the information they need to make the right decisions at the right time. It provides a much better way of working, encourages transparent communication, and ensures that all team members have access to the information that they need. It then also removes the responsibility of storing and managing that data from any one person or one department. Now, it's time to avoid these sort of common email headaches, of which, I'm sure people are familiar with these. That isn't what we agreed. When did you tell us this? Or John has left the company, so I'm coming in a bit cold to this. Some of the benefits of centralized information then include your data becoming more discoverable, eliminating human error through automated workflows, establishing version control, and reducing the amount of time wasted searching for and recreating lost documents. Then also increasing transparency and traceability, and complying with regulatory and legal requirements as well. And that's where we come in. So Ideagen's Mail Manager. So who are we, and why are we talking to you all today? So I'm sure everyone on this call may have heard of or even worked with Arup at some point. And for those who haven't, Arup is a global consultancy firm who have worked on the design and engineering projects such as the Sydney Opera House, the Queen's Ferry Crossing in Edinburgh, and more recently the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona as well. So Arup built Mail Manager around 10 years ago internally. The reason being they had no real control over the way that staff managed their emails. There were processes in place, things like public folders, project email addresses, manual drag and drop. However, all of these things relied on the individual, and the process of following it was manual. And of course, those two things together meant that things weren't ending up where they needed to be. So the two issues we had was really, one, project teams didn't have the up-to-date information on their projects as a whole, especially if they were coming in new to a project or someone had left the business. But also there was a large amount of risk there, particularly when having to sort of retain information for up to 14 years. Certain clients, certain projects, it was too risky to not have that clear paper trail. So there was a chance that you would be able to find the data, but it would have been extremely time consuming to do so. So Arup then wanted to sort of find a system that would allow them to keep working in the way that they wanted and search for any email across any project within a few clicks. They wanted to sort of take away the time of filing and the manual reliance, but there wasn't anything that was available at the time that would allow them to do that, particularly through Outlook. So they actually developed it themselves. They needed something that they could just turn on overnight, and given the size of their IT team, like I say, they developed it themselves internally. However, they then realized that they weren't the only people facing these issues, so they then made it commercially available. Now, I've got some of our clients here that are UK based construction firms. Now, hopefully, like Arup, there might be a few familiar faces there, and hopefully maybe some competitors. But yeah, they all implemented Mail Manager for a similar reason, whether that be increasing efficiency or decreasing risk. Some of our customer testimonies. So we regularly speak to our customers about how email processes have benefited them, and we tend to hear a few things sort of pop up regularly. For Gensler, for example, the key benefits of using Mail Manager was saving 5 hours per person per week in things like file coding and hard copy filing. And we've also enabled Gensler to comply with many quality assurance and statutory standards. Ramble Manager means the important project information is now accessible by the wider team, even when people are on holiday or leave the business, and they're confident in the fact that they will have access to the information years down the line, and it's now less time sensitive to find emails. So staff can then focus on the value adding work that they enjoy. With Mail Manager, Ramble actually saved approximately 3 hours per person per week, especially for project members and managers, with improved efficiency and productivity across its projects. WSP also found that better email management process means that they were able to retrieve project information in seconds, and they found greater business efficiency, and they can spend more time on real work and captured both sides of the conversation as well. All of these customer stories you've heard today tie back to 4 key issues we hear from businesses we talk to, and ultimately the reason they want to purchase an email management solution like Mail Manager. And these 4 issues are sort of summed up here. And you know, the first one being they're concerned about the consequences they may face if they were to lose any important project information. Second of all, they or their team spent a lot of hours every week searching for information contained within emails, or they're wasting time on administration like manually filing project emails. Third in there is that they're concerned about lack of control over communication that's coming in or out of the business. And finally, information is trapped in individuals' inboxes, making it effectively unusable. So with Ideagen's Mail Manager, we give our customers confidence that any email that has been filed can be retrieved, and businesses can find any email within seconds. Your productivity will increase, and finally, you have one central space for all of your project information, helping you to create and maintain that single source of truth. Now, as I said at the beginning, I'm going to do a short demonstration within my own Outlook, and I'm going to show you one example of filing an email. It's going to be an email that I have to respond to, but I'm also then going to use an example of how we search for an email perhaps that we haven't been involved in. So I'm just going to exit my PowerPoint and go into my emails here. Now, hopefully you can all see that. And then hopefully one of the key things you'll notice here is that my Outlook doesn't look too dissimilar from your own. It's a very light touch Outlook plugin, and it adds these buttons up here. Now, there are a lot of moving parts to Mail Manager, but let's just use this example here of an email that's opened up on my other screen. But it's an email that needs a response. So I can go to reply to it. It's project sensitive. Again, all opening up on my other screen. It's project sensitive, and I can just type out, yeah, please proceed, and go to hit send. Now, when I hit send, what you'll see is that this prompt has appeared on the screen. Now, this prompt is sort of the difference between 5% of emails getting saved and the majority of emails getting saved. As you can see there, a location has been selected for me. Now, that is the correct location, and how it's picked that up is it's used a little bit of AI and a little bit of machine learning to pick up on things like words in the body, words in the subject, who's included in the email, but also things like where have you personally filed to recently. All I then need to do to move that email to the project folder in the central location is hit send and file. And what you'll see there is that that email will now leave my immediate Outlook, keeping it nice and tidy and actionable and not overwhelming. But a central copy has been saved so that the rest of the team can access that as well. Now, that is a preference I have set up. You don't have to have the emails leaving your inbox if you don't want to, but I have them go into these subfolders on the side here as well. So that's just one bit of the filing. If we were then to go and search for an email perhaps that we hadn't been involved in or was before we joined the project, what we'd use is the Mail Manager search, which you open up through here. Now, you'd open up a new search. However, I keep it open, pin it to my taskbar, keep it open most of the day. And it looks like this. So what you can hopefully see is that we're looking across 270,000 emails across all projects that I have access to. Now, if I can get to the search bar up here, we can use multiple filters to hone in on what we're trying to look for. Now, the example I'm going to use, because it's pretty universal, is invoice. So when I type invoice in here into the equivalent of our keyword search, this is going to bring up all emails where invoice is in the subject line or the body of the text or even the sender of that email. What you'd hopefully see in a minute is that it will bring down from 270,000 emails, it will go down to a smaller number. There we go, 60,000 emails there. Now, 60,000 emails, not great at that stage, bit of a needle in a haystack. But another filter we can add over here is this one here, where you search by the name of the project itself. So I've never dealt with Gensler, but when I go to the Gensler folder, already just through those two filters, we've gone down from 270,000 emails to 250 emails. I then know, or perhaps have to ask a colleague, who managed that project at the time, and they mentioned that it was Georgina. So I add that in who was included in the email. Already we're down to 10. Now I'm looking for the invoice itself, so not the email. So I know I'm going to go and click attachments only, because I only want emails that have attachments. And once I click that, we're down to 2 emails. So we've gone very quickly there in a matter of seconds, and then only 4 clicks really, from 270,000 emails to 2. I can then preview that email there, find the one I'm looking for. But because of the way it's saved, you can then open it up and action it from there as well. What you'll hopefully notice there is that this is an email from 2019, so before I even joined the business. But because it was saved centrally and then via the power of the search, in seconds you can really hone in on what you're looking for. That's it from me. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, but really appreciate you all taking the time to join today, and I hope that was informative.
Absolutely brilliant, Beau. Really appreciate that. Very good presentation, and really interesting to see a different way that communication can be used to power projects and increase performance on projects, and also really nice to get a little potted history of the development of that technology as well. Okay, so now I'm going to just click a button here so that I can hopefully bring Simon back into the conversation. Now I know we're running a little short of time, so I'm going to race through a few very quick questions for both of you. Beau mentioned artificial intelligence there. Simon, a question for you. Do you use artificial intelligence to help bring all this information together and make sense of it? If not, do you think there's a place for it?
We're just starting to look at it. So the first step for us was to understand, what do we want to do? What could we use AI for? It's quite a scary world when you start to dip your toe in. You know, it can do everything and be used for everything. So we wanted to understand exactly what are the bits we're going to focus it at, and then start to use it. So our plan is to next year start to use AI on a few key areas, starting in pre-construction, interestingly, as well as just on site.
Right, good stuff. Beau, first question for you. Now, you may have touched on this, but how does Mail Manager manage permissions?
Yeah, really great question. Actually, it has no security settings itself. It would simply mirror and match what's already in place on your network. It would match the permissions of the business.
Okay, Simon, another one for you. Are you using technology to track costs and flag overspend in real time?
Yes. So, again, it was a big shift. So we've moved from monthly reports. I guess that was where we started. We now understand the data. We've created dashboards that pull straight from source. So I've got real-time data for every single one of our projects for costs, quality, safety, and sustainability.
Just in that case, moving on from there, how do you ensure that data is open standard, which can be used interoperably across a project? I don't even understand that question.
So I'm going to try my best to understand a couple of the words in there. So what I would say is we've standardized a lot of the coding around the naming conventions for certain things, and we control that quite rigorously. So all of our systems use the same names. So if we want to look for a particular partner, you can't spell it wrong. You can't have a capital letter at certain points. So all of the data starts to come through, and that's helped us keep it clean. But again, we had to start off at the very beginning by understanding all of the areas that data is going to be captured to put these rules in place. Right,
got you. Okay, another one for you, Beau. What happens with sensitive emails, e.g. HR?
So HR and finance departments within all the firms we work with still see benefit from a tool like Mail Manager. It's likely that there will be folders set up particularly for those departments or individuals in the server, and again, that's where the permissions come in. They'll have permissions set on there, but you're still able to utilize the benefits there as well.
Right. And I think you touched on this actually in your presentation, but when people leave the business, will they still have access to all emails they've received?
Yeah. So as long as those, you know, the emails have been consistently filed to the project folder, as it were, when an individual leaves the business, those emails will still be available and searchable within the network, even after they've gone.
Okay, and one more for you, Simon, which I think you'll easily answer. How many people does Simon have in his team at Willmott Dixon?
6.
I take it that's grown from day one.
Yeah, started at 1, which was me. We've just got to 6. We've started to as well. So we've got a sort of course that we take people through to develop their skills. So this is not about a team. It's about a business cultural change and getting everyone to be part of it. So we've got specialists that you can go back to, but we want and are going to have everybody using the skills across the business.
Brilliant. All right. Look, I think we've run out of time. I really appreciate both of you speaking to us today. Some really, really interesting information about reducing rework and making construction more productive and more efficient, which we desperately need. I think we all know that. So thank you very much, chaps. I'm going to switch back, say goodbye to you guys. A huge thank you to them both for bringing their expertise to bear on what is one of the biggest challenges I think we have in construction at the moment. I hope you enjoyed this webinar and take away some useful information and usable information from it. As I said, it will be available to view on demand in a few days' time, and you will receive an email with a link to view it at your leisure. Once again, thanks to Ideagen's Mail Manager for working with us on this event. And thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Thank you and goodbye.